Yes, Sean. Firstly, thank you for joining me, mate. I know that we got our heads together earlier and we thought that it was important to explore the journey around our new music video, The Enemy Within, which, for the viewers who may not know, is out now on YouTube and it's had some great feedback so far. Now, this conversation is a chance for the viewers to gain a clearer understanding of the events leading up to the shooting the music video and the initial ideas around it. So, firstly, then, Sean, obviously, I'm very much aware of the answers to some of these questions, but I'm keen for the viewers to get a better understanding of the connection and the process. So, how did the two of us first connect for this project?
It was just any opportunity we can get to make something and create, we want to do that. And then yeah, after making the previous music video together, it was how can we take it forward, um, and how can we kind of do something different, push the boat out a bit more, I guess, in from locations to the actual overall production of the video, and how can we kind of up the game really. So it kind of started there, didn't it? Of we know we want to do another music video. It's just when can we find an opportunity in calendars and diaries and stuff to do that really? Yeah.
I think for us, we're always pushing the boundaries. We're always trying to take it that one step further, aren't we? Now, since the music video got released, it's given me time to reflect on the process and where the concept and the video originated from, I guess. And for me personally, like I previously watched the rapper Ren, who, might I add, is like a breath of fresh air to the world of UK hip hop. Now, his track "Dear Ren" it genuinely inspired me, bro. So much that I knew all too well about living with that daily challenge of the positive and the negative outlooks of life and fighting between your head and your heart. And I wanted to put something like that out into the world, but consciously not copy his exact words and instead put like a Dribbz edge to it. And I think that's exactly what we did there. Like we kept the concept of battling with two personalities, but with clever camera angles and some in-depth planning was created like to do something similar, but very personal, which was everything that I wanted from the video. So when you first heard The Enemy Within, what visuals or ideas came to mind to you personally?
We'd always had, there's always kind of a handful of songs that we want to make a video. Which one is it going to be? That might be two or three, four songs of these are the ones I'd like it to be one of these ones. Um, and yeah, you're kind of listening, trying to kind of get a vibe of what you might want to do with stuff. And you were quite keen on this particular song, doing a video for it. Um, so then it's kind of trying to brainstorm that visually, isn't it, of how you can do it. And obviously the theme of this is the two voices kind of going at each other, if you like, which is the main kind of thread for this. So um, once we'd kind of set on that, then it's just kind of you quite early on said that you wanted to kind of how can we do this with two sides, with two, so it's a conversation, it's an argument, it's so the main thing for us was how do we do that, and how do we make it look effective, and how do we make it look that it isn't kind of cheesy, or how do we make that conversation happen with you either side of the table. And then it just comes from there, doesn't it, of like, okay, so how can we make that happen, and just kind of discussing that idea further, isn't it, really?
Definitely, yeah. Now, reflecting on like how the process evolved from an initial idea to the final cut, I think the planning and the preparation was all evidently clear with this one. Now, we planned many of the shots right to the fine detail, and it's evident in the end result, in my opinion. How did you find the whole planning process? And do you think there was times when we had different opinions and we may have like met each other in the middle?
The planning for this is I'll always be kind of pulling ideas and screen grabs from videos that I've seen anyway, and just kind of not quite a scrapbook, but saving ideas anyway. And then thinking, right, if I do a music video for this, or if it's something that I'll shoot for another project, like I like the idea of that. Or I like the idea of this. I like the how they've done the lighting in this, or how they've done this shot with these, with these people, etc. So I'll always kind of have ideas, and then always in the back of my mind that we were going to shoot a music video at some point, whenever that was. So it was kind of dipping into that again after our chats of, okay, we definitely want to do two people, the conversation going on between the two Dribbz either side of the table. Um, and then obviously we've got Slims singing the chorus hook. So we've got another person, which is different to how we had the last one. It was just you. That was it. So how are we going to incorporate that? So the first kind of images that kind of stood out that we discussed, the first one was one that I got a screenshot of something previously of a guy looking straight down the lens. It wasn't a video, it was just I had just this image basically. I don't know if it was just for a photograph. Um, and looking straight down the lens, the harsh light coming the one key light coming from the side, so it kind of casts that shadow, very dramatic. You can't see the background, just in the black, and it's kind of just that figure coming out of the darkness.
Yeah,
Having that photo and liking like, well, I want to do something with that. And then us chatting about the verses and like we want to do the chat about the table. So the kind of inspiration for that was recently, well, in recent, yeah, in the last handful of weeks, I guess, watching Adolescence on Netflix. And there's the one episode of that where the whole episode is the two people sat at the table having this conversation and the camera's kind of moving round and it's quite intense of just the two of them. So thinking ahead, I'm thinking we're not going to be able to probably move around the table and kind of do that because we've got you playing both parts and like this. So how can we kind of make that kind of dramatic look and getting some kind of screen grabs from that again? I'm thinking, right, okay, we can shoot this way for that. Then we can shoot this way. We can shoot over the shoulder so we can kind of cheat things. So they were the ideas of like the verses are going to be the battles between the two people. And then the verses, I like the idea of this kind of more dramatic um coming out of the dark almost because you don't know what the location is for that. It's not like we're at the table and now we're randomly in some other place. That kind of blacked outness doesn't really give you a location. It's kind of this other voice and then we're back to the conversation. So they were the
yeah,
two
yeah, yeah.
main visuals for the verse and chorus. And then it's about right, how can we recreate that? How can we do that? Um, which is always trial and error as well, isn't it? So
Always, always. No, obviously, like when we plan these productions, these music videos, we almost take on certain roles. And like with me, like independently for me, I take on like little things like the costumes, changes of costumes and things like that. And you're more focused on the finer details like the lighting and things like that. How did you plan your shots with the lighting?
I think it's trying to, first of all, keep it as the whole production as light as we can because we haven't got the budget there. There wasn't a lot of budget. We haven't got a lot of time. It was us hanging around for a day basically to make all of this between all the locations. Slim's coming over and recording one bit with us. So there's a lot to cram in a day. So although I could look at this and go, we could do this, 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 and this, and this, if we had multiple days at hand, we would have, but we knew we had a day and an evening before for maybe an hour just to discuss some stuff. But basically, we had a day. So
Yeah,
that's what you're thinking about first of all. So with the verses, it's kind of we know what we wanted. We found the location that we wanted, which we can discuss further, but we found the location that we like. So just some lighting set up in there to complement the natural lighting that we already had and using what you've got. I always feel like if we can use the natural lighting that we've got for the best part, then we'll try and use that. And then again with the verses, it was kind of the other way round of we need to create this look, where we did it at night time. We need to create this look. It's not us just in an open room and finding the nicest spot. This was all about creating a look and creating it with the light. So it was finding looking at that inspiration, that shot that we had, thinking how can I recreate that? And then it's like, where and how do we do that then? Like, so I know how to do it, but where can we film that then? So first of all, we'd said we need to do it in the dark. Um, to have that black background behind, we need space behind us because once you've got the light in your face and you've got a wall as close as it is like where you are now, it's just going to light up all the wall as well. So it's just not going to work. So
Need depth.
we need the space. So it's just black in the background, for what we wanted to do with this. So trial and error. In filming basically where you're sat right now um, is a small little part to your studio space that you have there, which is almost kind of like a vocal booth almost. So I thought, well, that's darker in the background. Let's just try it. And just because you've got that dividing wall in that space that you're in there, it happened to block out all of the light behind whilst us having the key light on the face. And it was almost instantly of looking at the monitor and we've got it. That was
Got it.
it's done. So it was a little bit of luck as well, because in my head I'm thinking, well, if we do this and it doesn't work for whatever reason, then I was already thinking, right, it's night time. It was about 10 o'clock at night. Maybe we'll go in the garden. Maybe we'll go outside because I mean there's lots of space behind. And let's go in a dark corner in the garden somewhere and try that. So you're already, I think like shoots like this, you're always trying to you've got to work with what you've got, and unless you've got an absolute endless pot of money where you can do anything, you've got to work with what you've got. So it's always troubleshooting of, I've got an idea. If that doesn't work, right, what else can we do? But thankfully for that, we stood in the place. We actually took some reference photos.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
which we obviously had so we could remember our setup. They were very simple, but as you'll see from those reference photos, it's a really simple setup, but it just we looked at it and it worked. So it was nice to try and create something different with from what we've done previously. So I'm pleased with how our reference shot of how that ended up looking in the main video in the finished article really. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, like obviously we'll talk about this a little later on, but the preparation that we did, it made our life a whole lot easier, didn't it? Because the very next day, we knew
Yeah.
as soon as it dropped dark, them shots were going to be possible.
Well, yeah, and it's that we had one day to film it, and we knew, we tried to minimize the trial and error, trial and error. That's great, doesn't work. That's great, doesn't work, or whatever. So that's why, like I said, we had an hour the night before, and coming round to you at 10 o'clock at night, wait until it's dark just to try it. That's great. Let's get a few pictures of it so we can remember why we set that up. And then the next day was in, set up, stand in place. There we go. We're good to go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking to the shooting location, like we discussed various locations, and with the main topic of the music video being like a natural conflict between me and myself, I gave you maybe three or four locations that we could try. One being a record store, the other being somewhere that appears quite clinical, as in some sort of like counseling. Now, I remember you explaining that you just needed somewhere that was fairly basic, as the whole emphasis was kind of focusing on them close-up shots of myself. So going off this, I managed to secure the village hall in my area for a few hours. How do you think that that particular venue served for the ideas of shots that you prepared?
Again, one of the things that we've done at the start of these videos, we're not working with any budget. We've got our skill sets between us of and things that we can get hold of, whether that's props, whether that's venues. But again, it feels like when you're working to a budget as well of you've got to look and go, what are our resources that we have to hand instead of going, I've got this great idea where we're on the top of a mountain or on top of a building and it's like, well, that's great, but where the hell is that place and how the hell do we get access to that? And the answer is we don't. So with that, it's kind of you like we said, it's the record store. So great, let's film a performance camera, let's film something in the record store. That could work and that would be fine. Um, and then we thought, well, we're going to do this enemy within the two people. Well, that's not going to work in that place. So again, we had ideas of different things of how do we do this conversation, and basically at the end of it, it was looking again at those shots from adolescence, those interview
Yeah,
shots. We weren't trying to copy that. It was just more the framing of, how close we were and how wide we were. That we just needed two people sat at a table that was kind of an almost like a nondescript background. It didn't need to be anything in particular. And we had a couple of places. I think we had another place that was this lovely kind of room, but it just looked quite almost like a cafe tea room, quite lovely decorated, and quite a small, quaint little room that's like, okay, well, it's nice, but doesn't really feels like, we just need some tea and cakes in the middle and doesn't fit the vibe. Now, Village Hall was just kind of a bit non-specific, but it could be a place where, you could see from the opening shot of the video and the final shot, you can see someone walking in, someone walking out, and it feels just like an empty space where two people have just come to talk. So it kind of worked for that. So you are at mercy with the venues that you have and the options that you have, but for what we needed, that worked perfectly.
Definitely. In hindsight, is there anything that you would have changed about that venue? And was there any challenges when it came to renting the village hall? I mean, I suppose for example, one of the challenges for me directly was we only had, was it 2 hours we had? We didn't have long, did we?
Wasn't long at all, was it?
We
So
managed to work till that last minute, didn't we?
yeah.
If you remember.
And again, that's just time management. I feel like in shoots and doing this stuff and in other projects and work that I do is you've got X amount of things to do in the time that you've got. And you don't usually have the luxury of we can just have another day. We can just have 2 more days. It's
Yeah,
you just don't have it. So you have to be prepared as you can. So we knew going into that we've got to film. We know, sorry, we've got to get in. We've got to look around and go, right, what space do we like the look of? We had some photos, but we didn't quite know. So it's going in and going, okay, we can set the table up there. That'll work both ways for the both conversations. That's fine. Then we've got to factor in, okay, um we need to record. So Dribbz 1 and Dribbz 2 on the table. So we've got Dribbz 1, we need to do at least 2 takes of that. And then any extra bits, the kind of nod-ins, the reacting shots. Then we need to change the outfit, spin around the other way. Then we need to do Dribbz 2 at least 2 times, and get the extra bits as well. Then we cheated in some shots where it was me with your jacket on, sat the other side, and we're just kind of getting the shoulder, and then it's you sat the other side to kind of add to that illusion. It definitely, sadly, it wasn't two Dribbz in real life. But it's those little
one's enough, mate. One's enough.
but that's it. So it's factoring in all of those things and then having that kind of checklist of, well, we need the intro shots, we need the outro shots. And I think our final outro shot was literally the last like 2 minutes, wasn't it? When we were like,
Really was.
we've got
Yeah,
it. It's about kind of, it's 5 to 4 or whatever it was that we'd finished and we needed to be out. So it's kind of, we could sit and keep filming, but we need this shot and we need this thing. So, that final shot, taking the cap off and walking off, we planned where we wanted to do it. We did it a couple of times. It was like, no, no, it's not quite right. The glasses need to be there, not there, but just marginal things. And then we just did that one take and bam, bam, and it's in the perfect spot on the screen. And you're walking away. It's like, keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. Don't stop. We've got the take, keep walking. But then when that's cut together, we got that final one. It's like, right, we need to go. We need to get out. So it's
yeah,
yeah. Um, it's you're working with the venue, but you're managing your time of how you can get everything out of it. And I think, sorry, you did say in hindsight, what would you do differently?
different.
I
Yeah,
think it was just we got everything, the essentials to make the video. In hindsight, I mean, and everything else. If you could have another hour, I was thinking, well, I might try and get a shot of the clock ticking, or I might get a shot of just some fingers tapping nervously, or just little bits like that when you're editing it together. But it wasn't missing anything. It's just if I could do more, then I could, if I could do more, I could have the camera moving round and you're both walking round and that. But yeah, I mean, then we're looking at a completely different video altogether, aren't we? Of how do we do that with
absolutely.
CGI and everything else? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that shot that you talk about there with the cap and the shades going down, I've had so many people come back to me and say like it's almost one of the most powerful shots of the whole music video, and I was quite surprised at that because I thought
Okay.
they'd pick on different bits, but that particular shot, because everyone knows me as having the cap and the shades, and that is my identity. It was almost like the identity was being took off and being stripped back. And yeah, I've had a lot of people refer back to that as being literally the most powerful shot of the whole music video.
Well, again, it's trying to decide ahead of time of okay, playing the song and plotting it out, isn't it? Of like, okay, this is what the verse is going to look like. This is what the chorus we think is going to look like, and we'd like to do. Um, but how are we getting into it? Because we've got that short intro. How do we set up where we are? You don't want to just appear at the table. It's like, where are we? The walking in, the sitting down. There's someone already sat down over the table who kind of gives you a bit of a nod and it's like, okay, it's kind of the loading up of where's this going to go. And then
Yeah,
the end, you could do that final chorus and then never go back to the people having a chat. And it's like, okay, it kind of leaves it, I don't really know. So it was that simple idea, wasn't it? That we were like, what if we've had the intro from one, we have the outro, the other person kind of leaving, and it can be taken however it wants to be taken, however it's
yeah.
interpreted. But I do, and there's no right or wrong answer to that, is there? But I like the idea of the Dribbz 2, the voice, if you like, is leaving at the end. But again, it just kind of feels like more of a kind of full stop to it, and it was literally the last 20 seconds of our time that we had before we had to get out fast.
It really was. Now, when it comes to camera gear, I have no idea personally what equipment you supply to shoot the video. I just know that it's A, high quality and definitely did the job. Now, for the benefit of the viewers, can you give them a rundown of the type of equipment that you used and was there any technical challenges with the equipment on the day?
Previously, so videos that we've done before was a lot of movement and following you. You were kind of performing to the camera. So you've got the camera on the gimbal, which is basically holding this to keep the camera steady, really. So that previous video is, you're performing and I'm moving quite a lot and following you. You're performing to the camera. But this was the opposite to that. This particular video was all kind of on the tripod set up, but it was composing those shots of we know we want the kind of wider shot of you. And we know we want that kind of tighter shot that just feels more intense, really kind of tight shots of quite close up and you see those expressions. Um, so for the verses on it, we wanted just to compose those shots to make them quite intense. In the chorus, where we're using that moody lighting, now, if again we wanted to plan that shot so it was them appearing out of the light, so it was just kind of had the camera static and then preparing all of that shot to, how we wanted it to be. Um,
Yeah,
so again, it's just if we had 2 days, 3 days, we could go, well, we'll go out here. We'll have a shot where you're in a car, you're walking here, you're walking there, we could do more. But what we were working with, it's like, okay, we've got this strong idea of what we want the verses and chorus to look like, what we want you and Slims to look like when you're performing, what we want the verses to look like when Dribbz 1 and Dribbz 2 are, going at each other. So, um, yeah, it was more of a simple setup, really, but it was in the preparation of creating the right lighting and creating the right shots.
definitely, definitely. One thing that's evidently clear, like with this music video, is that there is some striking visuals included for the chorus and the hook. Now, which it with all that, it provides such a strong impact for the whole music video in general. Can you break down the symbolic or stylistic choices of the visuals that you chose when it came to shooting the music video?
I think one of the things to factor in with doing this is the time that we have to do something and not trying to do too much where that's going to take 2 days or we run out of time or we're trying to be too ambitious. We can make something look really, really good by doing some good prep and it doesn't have to be extensive and days worth of filming if we get the prep and get it right. So that just came from those first ideas that we talked about of just add some that one image of looking down the lens, having the kind of quite dramatic look that you don't really know where it is. It's just this kind
Yeah,
of in the darkness. Um, and using that as an idea and having the performances in that kind of space. Um, and then, like you said, it's the verses are it's a conversation. So it's how do we make that kind of moody? How do we make that quite intense? Those I love those close-up shots that really kind of feel like you're sat at the table and kind of the reaction shots to things being said, and you see those little reactions which we worked on of when you're performing. You've got this Dribbz 2 saying these things where it's just like yap, 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 and really kind of in your face. And then you've got Dribbz 1 reacting as if, well, if someone was saying that to me, how would I react? And
Yeah,
it
exactly.
would kind of get you back up a bit. And that's what we wanted to do. So you see those reactions of if someone was saying that to you in a conversation. And I like those kind of close-up shots because it adds to the intensity of it. It's like you're sat at the table and you're listening to Dribbz 2, the voice, the enemy within, and it would get your back up. And we said about this, it's like imagine if someone is speaking to you saying these things. It would get you like it would make you itch. It would get you kind of like riled up, and that's what this is, and that's what I felt like it
Yeah.
should be. Yeah.
Now, moving on to the writing process of The Enemy Within, I want to take the time to personally reflect on the positives and the negatives of bringing the lyrics all together. And for me, this was a tricky combination to form as one in the aspect of effectively I'm performing as two different characters, i.e., my head and my heart. So this certainly wasn't the usual formation that I write to. I really had to sit and think of the finer details, as in, if my spontaneous, elusive mind had a voice, then how would it sound? And secondly, how would it pronounce certain tones of lyrics? I was delivering, and that in itself was a huge task. I literally must have spent hours going over that second voice until I got a tone of voice that I was satisfied with. And then came the hard part, and that was to keep up that same tone of personality the whole way through the song. That was a massive learning curve for me. And when doing practice takes, I honestly thought that I wasn't going to get it, but I'm pleased that I got it. Possible that, so I was massively proud of my small achievements that took me to that final take. And one thing my listeners may have noticed about previous tracks of mine is I feature different artists to perform my choruses, and that is mainly down to I put so much deep emotion and effort into my verses that I often overlook the choruses as being an important part, as well as the verses that I'm delivering and creating to make it spontaneous, as in a catchy hook. Now, this is exactly what happened with The Enemy Within. The intro was complete, the verses had been written, and I distinctively remember a local artist, a good friend of mine who goes by the name of Slimothy D. He dropped by my studio for a catch up, and I happened to show him this new project, and that I was struggling to write a catchy chorus that would sum up all the individual choruses. Now, that lad, he took one listen and he reached for the pen and paper. And while he was jotting down ideas, I was still talking to him about other future projects. And by the time I'd finished explaining, I was awaiting his response, and he fell silent. And I said to him, "Are you even listening, Slims?" Turned out he wasn't listening at all. Instead, he wrote down a killer of a hook and was repeating it in his head until it sounded just right. Now, he passed me that notepad and said, "Take a look." And from reading it myself, I initially couldn't quite catch how he wrote it down. And I asked him, I said, "Tell you what, get yourself in that booth, lay it down, and let's have a listen." And within two takes, we had Slimothy D's feature, and that track was complete. Now, Slims has always been known for performing on drum and bass, and more recently, he spoke about trying different styles of hip hop. So, for him, what better way to ease him in and to find his feet with an 8-bar chorus on a featured track? We've been good mates for so many years now. We'd often spoke about collabing on tracks together. So him dropping that on The Enemy Within was the perfect moment to me. So, question for you then, Sean. How do you think Slim's chorus that he wrote fitted in with the version and the deliverance of the song?
From my point of view, your song's already written and done. So it's just trying to make that look great visually and trying to do something that is interesting. So it goes back to, the verses are you. Um, it's Dribbz versus Dribbz, and we knew what we wanted to do with that. So with Slim's featuring in the chorus, it's just how do we create something else for the verses? Because first, and again, you're always just at mercy of where you're always just at mercy of the location and your schedule and what you're working with. So me and you filmed it first thing in the morning, and Slims wasn't available until the second half of the day. So it's little things like that of just like, okay, these are the resources and the times and everything that we have to work with. So how do we make this work? So the chorus is done. Sorry, the verses are done. We know what we do with them. So then that kind of ties into that first inspiration idea of let's perform down the lens in this kind of darkness of we don't know where it is. We don't. It kind of is a kind of a non-place, if you like, that just fits for the chorus. So having him in that space, and then there's little bits of you in the chorus, but less so, um, and kind of having him there as the hook in that kind of dark space that is a bit of a no space. We don't know where that location is, if you like. Um, and then I think it works really well. And yeah, it's when you're doing the performances as well. I was just thinking back to what you were saying earlier about you preparing the verses of how you were going to perform it because you're doing it as two voices, if you like. And again, with Slim's performing the chorus, you find your feet, you give it a few takes, and you decide oh, that was good. I like when you did that thing. Let's try this thing and that thing. And with everything, the first takes were good. You discussed a few ideas, and you're like, oh, there we go. Now it's finding its feet, kind of thing. And then it's like, why don't you try this? Why don't you just try, performing this line that way? And then sometimes it's like, oh, it's fine. That didn't work as well, so that's okay. But if you're in a safe space for people to try stuff, then you can do that. Do you know what I mean? And it was a case of, okay, give this a go, try that, and then you get a take, and you're like, that's it. That's what I needed. It needed that something.
Yeah, yeah.
So we did that with Slims as well. He doesn't know. He didn't even know what he was walking into in a sense of,
No, it
I
was all
don't
prepped
know.
for him to come, wasn't it? It
Well,
was just
exactly.
all we need you to do is turn up and know your 8 bars. That's all we
And I
need you to
and I
do.
get that. So even though it was very low key in your studio, we knew what we were going to do because we planned it and we kind of thought of that's where the lighting is. We know that. He's walking in going, well, I know this track, but I don't get what they want me to do. Do they want
Yes,
me to
yeah,
sing, act? What do they want me to do? And then, for him to see the setup and give it a few goes, and then all three of us to go, oh, we like that. That was good on that last line. You did this thing, and it's like, that looks really great. So we did that with Slims. But the one thing that comes to mind as well is when we were doing those verses as the other Dribbz, was we were saying about how you're performing it, but we were also talking about the listening. That you can sit and go, I'm going to sing my rap, and I'm just going to wait, and then I'm going to sing my line. You can just sing the lines and perform them fine, but you need more than that for the video. You need to be thinking like we said earlier. If someone is saying those lines to you, are you going to be going bobbing like I'm just vibing to a tune, or are you going to be thinking, what the hell? Like someone's just said this absolutely horrible thing to me and is just being this mean, horrible person is talking to me right in my face and laughing and smirking and thinking like you're an idiot. Like you're not going to be going, this is a vibe. You're going to be reacting to it. And like that's something that I feel like you did a take and it was great. And then we discussed that. And then the next take was completely transformed. You were
yes,
rapping a line and then you were listening to that other voice and that was coming through. It wasn't a case of when that line said, react really angry, and when that line said, look like you're laughing and shrugging it off. It wasn't that. It was just listen to it. Just listen to that music,
absolutely.
listen to that voice.
Yeah,
And what if that is someone talking to you like that? Sometimes it's like that's mildly annoying. And there's sometimes we're like, what the hell have you just said? Like, without swearing, you know, what you saying that to me? That's a horrendous thing to say. That's really winding me up and making me angry. So they're the things that kind of bring things to life, don't they? And just make it from going, well,
definitely.
that looks good to Oh my God, I'm in it. I'm listening to the words.
Prior to shooting the music video for our previous project, before that was Never Fall Apart, which is available on YouTube still, and it's running up the numbers, doing really, really well still. I want to talk to you a bit more about the contrast between the two music videos. You know, what inspired the shift from the more point and shoot approach that you used previously?
The first video for Fall Apart was very kind of run and gun. Um, we had me and you with a backpack each, a Bluetooth speaker, and I had the camera on the gimbal, and that was basically it. And we were like,
That
okay,
was
we
it.
want we want that rundown, we want that rundown kind of look, and we had a few options in mind of where we could go, and that was it. And we knew that they were going to be outdoors, and we knew it would kind of be in the middle of nowhere potentially, um, and we knew that we had the car to get there, and that was it. And it was just me and you. We didn't have an extra pair of hands. We didn't have a set of crew to come in. We just certainly didn't have any of that whatsoever. To go, okay, we found this spot. Okay, so let's do the big lighting rig. Let's do this. Let's do, we literally had the camera in hand and a backpack each
And
with
I
a Bluetooth
suppose like
speaker.
them, sorry to interrupt you there. I suppose them like locations we've never fall apart anyway, more so than anything. It wasn't like a dedicated venue that we'd booked time that was ours. We were kind of
Mm.
trying to get anywhere we could and for as long as we could. So we never knew how long we were going to spend there,
And
you know?
again, that comes down to the preparation because we went into that video saying, well, this is what we want to do. We want to find this rundown location, and that's the kind of vibe we want to do. And we want to have you perform into camera. And that was what we wanted the video to be. So we did our preparation for that, and found potential locations where they are. And we did actually have, again, the night before, a recce to just go and have a check over one of those. But so it was the prep again, even though it was different. So that video was run and gun. You've arrived there. Okay, this is the space we like. Let's figure out. Okay, the sun's coming through that way. Okay, let's move around this way. That backdrop looks good. Great, we've got our spot. Let's do the video. Let's do a handful of takes of it. What we need, and then let's get a few shots, extra bits and pieces that we cut together, and that was it.
Definitely.
So then
Yeah,
the opposite, it's the same with this video. It's the same, the prep, the ideas, what we want it to look like. But I just wanted to do more than that. I wanted to have a couple of different locations to start with, um, because we had a little bit more time, as in, well, we had a day. So actually, we probably had the same amount of time. Um, but we wanted to do a few different locations and stuff. We wanted to try more of a concept of an idea of, with just the kind of run and gun wouldn't have really fitted this one for that idea. We wanted to be planned, sat down at a table, walking in and out of that door. There was little bits that we had to kind of practice and get right. And with the lighting in the chorus, the moody dark look we had to prep and get right. And it wasn't us kind of walking up a hill in the middle of nowhere like the first video with a light on your shoulder. We didn't have that, but we didn't want
no,
to do that. So
no,
everything just depends on what you want to do, and then try and prep as much as you can. But equally, nothing ever goes the way it's planned anyway. So it's just like, okay, we have to react. And the last video was we got to a venue, we started halfway through it, and then we got kicked off it. And we had no way of, we couldn't use that because we had bitty bits of it and we couldn't go back to it. So then we had to react to it to find the next place, which ended up being the best place and the place where it was filmed. So we reacted to it. With this one, we didn't have too much of that, to be honest, because we prepped fairly well, and everything kind of went to plan. There might have been little bits, but I think for the best part, we didn't have to kind of problem solve too much. So, I mean,
no.
it's down to the planning, but also down to just it went well, and you've just got to take it as a win because sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So thinking back to obviously our current project that we've done at the moment, can you talk about a specific angle or a shot in the new video that you're especially proud of and why it worked for that moment?
as I said, what we were trying to do is just kind of up the game. We did that run and gun shot. It looked great and we were really happy with it. How can we kind of up the game a little bit with different locations? The idea of Dribbz 1 and Dribbz 2. So there was particular things like that that I like the look of, where you're trying to create the illusion because it goes from Dribbz 1 to Dribbz 2 and you cut in between and it's conversation. And then I like those close-up shots because they show a lot of emotion and it feels like you're kind of right there. I love those shots anyway. And when I shoot in my work outside of making these videos with you and my work of filming interviews, I like those kind of intense shots anyway. Um, and then it was it wasn't my favorite shot, as in like, but one of the ones I do like is the ones where we're both in it for the sense of it was the little bits that you kind of the little seeds you put in just to try and add to the illusion that there's two people sat at this table and we don't have the budget for big grand kind of CGI thing and have them in the same chat in the same shot and all of this, but it's how can you cheat it? How can you make that look the best it can be by cheating it? And I like those shots, when I had to walk in and sit down, and it's only a small frame. I had to walk past the camera and sit down with your jacket on, and it's just the arm. But then you're sat the other side, and there's two people in the shot. There is two
Yeah,
people moving in the
yeah.
shot,
And, and for
and I
someone
like
that
that.
wasn't aware of that, they'd never know, would they? They'd never know
And I mean,
unless you
it
pointed it out.
helps with your cap on, shades on, kind of like head down look. We're at a similar height, so I thought, okay, let's just try it. And that was one of those again where I've got ideas, and it's like, let's try them. If you look down the camera and you go, just doesn't work,
Yeah,
it's rubbish.
yeah,
Then
yeah.
fine, but I feel like we did it, and it's like it does work. That was cool, and that works. So
Does work.
it's just
It
those kind
definitely
of little
did work.
sprinkles, isn't it? Of just I feel like this is where we wanted to kind of up this video with those little bits, that just kind of sprinkle in it and feel like they up the value. And for myself, the kind of the video kind of animation transition effects that are on the chorus and just adding that bit of something else and just like, okay, how can we up this one? The other one was just run and gun, performance down the camera, tick. But this one we
Good.
wanted to
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
do
yeah.
a bit more. And I feel like
Definitely.
I'm really pleased with the outcome of our
100%.
first plans of what we did in basically a handful of hours.
Yeah, 100%. Do you feel more pressure when shooting with a planned angle driven approach, or does it give you a more creative control?
I think going into any shoot, it's always any shoot. I just feel like there is that kind of, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but you've got all the ideas, and then it's kind of like you got to do it now, you know. And we prepped beforehand and got the lighting things right, and go, okay, we know we're going to do that. But ultimately, I don't want to get to the end of the day or the end of one location, and go, I just didn't look that good, or it just didn't work,
Yeah,
or you know what I mean? So there is that kind of pressure on yourself of, well, I want it to be the best it can be, and the ideas are great. And if it's in my head of it's going to be like this, then it will look good. But for all the planning for when we filmed with Dribbz 1 and Dribbz 2 parts, I knew what I want it to look like. But then when we go to the venue, I don't know, is this going to work? We should be able to make it work. But that's when you factor in, okay, we've already been here 20 minutes and we've just unpacked the gear and the lights, and now we've got an hour and a half, and we've got to do
yeah,
one take, two take, three take, four take, five, that one, that shot, that shot. So it's trying to focus on getting it right and also manage your time. So yeah, there's
definitely.
more. It's kind of pressure on yourself, isn't it? Because we're not. This isn't. This is just for you, for us. So in that sense, there's no pressure, but we've planned it. We just want it to be good. We just want it to be the best it can be. So
Definitely.
it's that
Definitely.
pressure, isn't it? Of just, I don't want to get to the end of the
Yeah,
day and go, oh, it's just all right. I wish it was. I had these grand ideas, but when you go
yeah,
out
yeah.
and then you look back, you're like, that looked great. That really worked, in the hour that we had or whatever it was.
Definitely. Do you feel like the stylized direction made the performance feel more cinematic, or did it lose some of its raw energy from compared to the previous video?
It just depends on what you're doing for what video.
Yeah, I
And the
suppose they're
aim
two
was
different videos, aren't they?
Yeah, I
About it.
think what I wanted to do with this was the intensity of it. Um, And the other one, the first video, had the energy. There's movement. I'm following you perform into the camera, kind of attacking it and like going at it. This one is you're attacking someone across the table. You're having a conversation with someone, almost an argument. So how can I capture that? And it's those kind of more close-up shots, I guess, that it's getting that intenseness of the conversation. And how do I do that? So with that shot, it's the camera's still, they're static shots, but it's creating that, getting that kind of energy in a different way because it's that kind of intenseness of like I'm sat here right next to this argument and it's really
Yeah,
kind of I'm first person right here. So I think it's different in different ways, but the
yeah,
intensity's there from this, from those kind of intense shots, I think, really.
yeah. So looking ahead, then, do you prefer working with more structure and specific angles, or do you still value the freedom of point and shoot style?
I think you're always going to have an element of both. Um, you've got to be organized anyway, because especially when you've got more than one location, which is pretty much anything, then
Anything? Yeah,
you don't have the luxury of time, so you have to use your time. Um, so yeah, but then but yeah, so there's wanting to be planned and get the shots that you need that we've already planned and we know they're going to look great, and then we set them up, and thankfully they did. But then the run and gun stuff is just fun as well because you don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes you want to just let's go and have a look over there. Let's just try that. Let's just try that thing. Let's have you just walking through that door and let's just try that shot. And then sometimes it doesn't work. And then sometimes it's like, that's it, that's the shot. So it's nice
yeah,
to kind of have that creativity at that time to do it. But again, it just comes down to time. Like when if I'm filming and working on a TV show, you've just got that day and that time, and there's multiple people who are relying on you, whether it's actors, whether it's crew, whether it's anything. So you've only got that time. So for us, we didn't have that pressure, but still, we had one day, and then we were, we only had that day put aside where we could do it. Then, you know, we're back to the other ends of, other sides of the country. Do you know what I mean? So it was a pressure that we had that day to do it. Otherwise, we had half a video and that's it. So then we don't have a video. So it's the
yeah.
pressures of that, isn't it? So, but yeah, there's two sides
100%.
to it, isn't there? You can be prepared, but it's always nice to be creative to just try stuff. And then if it pulls off, sometimes it's like, that's the one, that's the one.
Absolutely, definitely. Now, obviously, me and you have been friends for so long now. Do you think our friendship influenced your creative process on set?
The positives to what we're doing is that you're, especially when it's creative, it's feeling comfortable working with someone.
True.
And
Yeah.
that, I think that's the biggest benefit to creating, because I'm not saying just working together, but in a creative sense, because it's being comfortable with someone, because there are lots of times when you're making something, whether it is making some music, being in a band with someone, filming something, whatever you're doing, performing or doing something in a creative sense, there's lots of I'm not too sure if that works, or why don't we try that thing? And it's not kind of taking that with your ego and taking that to heart of going, well, I just made that idea and I like that idea. And not, it's kind of trying to be in a space where you can communicate and knowing that if I say, why did we try that this way? You're not going to go, well, he thinks that I'm crap or he thinks that wasn't good enough. It's we're in a place where we know we work together and we know that if you've said, actually, I'm not sure about this, can you try this instead? You might not be technical with the camera, but you can look and go, I think we should do this by looking at it. And we're like, okay, well, let's try it. I might be
Yeah.
thinking, well, I don't agree with you, but then you've suggested an idea, and we try it, and it's like that was better. Let's do it. So it's trying to it's hard to putting your ego aside, but it's if you're comfortable working with someone when we are, it's there's been loads of times where I went, you've done a performance, and I don't know how you felt about it, and I went, that was about a 5 out of 10, and you're not going. Get lost, like what you on about? It's kind of I will say I think that's a 5 out of 10 because I feel like your energy was about here, but why don't we try this? It's not a criticism like that was rubbish, do it this way. It's what can we do? What else can we try to develop it, So I feel like that's the positives of working, having that kind of, friendship between us, that we know we're both
Definitely.
working towards the same thing, but also any kind of, well, there isn't criticisms, it's how can we improve things, how can we make things better? Try this, try that, and it makes the whole thing better. So they're the pluses of
Yeah, it
knowing that,
does.
there's no criticisms, it's just how can we
Yeah.
make the biggest project better?
Definitely. Can you think of one moment from any of the video shoots that kind of really sums up our working relationship? Like for me personally, it's when like an idea comes together, a shot that we've looked back on and we both agree is fully what we visioned. And
Yeah.
it's that like handshake or the fist bump, and it's like, yeah, do you know what I mean? Like we both visioned it and there it is on the camera.
I feel like we have lots of them moments though. Even
Yeah, true.
when we've got this video that we've just done, then we've got Never Fall Apart that was, a year and a half ago, something like that. But then before that, when I first started kind of picking up a camera, newer to it, we filmed lots of videos and, they were I didn't know anywhere near as much as I know now, and I look back. But I think, like, do you know what? For what we had at the time, for the knowledge I had at the time, by what we had at the time, we did the best we could with what we had. And I look back on all of those. So there's loads of moments through all of those where at the time you're like, let's just try it, and then it works, and it just it gets you buzzed and excited. I think
Good.
when we did like these last two videos of obviously we got together, hung out with a more basic camera, filmed some bits a while ago. Then a few years passed because time and everything else. And then we got back together and did the last two. And then it felt like, okay, well, for me, it was like, I know what I'm doing now a bit more instead of just, I think this is how you do it. And I think this is how you edit. Let's just do the best I can. So that was nice of just, if you've had ideas and I'm like, instead of going, I'm just going to do the best I can, you're having ideas and I can go, I know how to do that, but I'll take that idea. And what about if we do that and this? And then it's like, oh, okay. So I guess as we've got better, our resources, our kind of vision of what we want, then the excitement is of being able to do more, isn't it? Of just even the jump up
Definitely,
from
yeah.
this video to the last video is like, well, let's plan some locations, let's plan some scenes, let's plan this, let's get someone else involved. They're the things of like, oh, well, this is exciting now because it's going up a level, we're doing more things, and the kind of like I said, it's not that stress, but that kind of I want it to be right, I want it to be the best it can be, and then when you put it together and it's done at the end of the day, you're absolutely knackered and tired when you filmed it. And then when you start putting it together, it's like, then we're sharing things back and forward. I send you a screenshot and you're saying, oh, I can't wait to see the full thing. And then I feel like, oh, that makes me want to just work another half an hour, just get a bit more done to share a bit more. And then that's where the kind of buzz comes back. Yeah, that's good.
It definitely is. And finally, then, looking to growth and vision, how do you think that we've both grown creatively since our very first video together? So we're talking like Boy Named Jay. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
Since
yeah.
way before Never Fall Apart. Obviously, you've got more experience in that industry that you're in there. I've got more experience as an artist with the hip hop because
Hmm.
back when we did Boy Named Jay, and I don't mind saying this to viewers, I'm happy to say this. Like my first album that I created, or obviously produced with yourself, when I listen back to that now, it's like a drum and bass MC trying to find his feet in the world of hip hop. Now I listen to pieces of me, I'm like, okay, I've found my style, found where I belong in hip hop. I'm doing it. But that's obviously how I see the progression since that very first video. But how do you see it?
It's always, I started it because I found a passion for picking up a camera and not really doing it before, knowing how to take a photo, but not really knowing too much. And then getting introduced to it. And then, like, starting was just, this is just fun. I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because, oh my God, that was fun. So, that time when I first picked up a camera, I remember spending 6 months just filming something every week. It was whether I, being in London of just, I'm just going to go to, there's a venue around the corner. I'm just going to go and film a band and just go, I'll just cut you a little video together of like 30 seconds if you want. And they were like, well, Yeah, free video, great. And it wasn't that good. It was, fairly simple, but I just wanted to do that. And then, okay, I'm coming back. I'm, coming back your way. I've got a day, and like, let's just do as much as we can. Let's make something. Um, and then that enthusiasm's still there. Now it's just I still want to create. If I'm working and filming for work, but I'm still thinking. I've got a kind of a list of things and ideas that are just like for videos and things that I could do with you. And I'm like, well, if there's a chance to do it, I just can't wait to do it. Um, so that kind of excitement to make stuff is always there. But then the progression has been probably just the skills to actually do it and just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
being able to write an idea. And I mean, still now, I'm looking at ideas now going, oh, I want to make something bigger and better. How do I do that? I've seen that video with a massive budget for that artist or something, or that video. How do I make it look like that? How do I do that? So there's always I always feel like you never got there. You've done it. It's always like, what else can I make? That's looking at videos now that have probably had like hundreds of thousands of budget, and I'm like, oh, but how do I make that? How do I make that? Um, I guess it's just the progression is just being able to come up with ideas and create, and then going, oh, okay, I know how to do that shot. I know how to make that look like that. Seeing just having reference shots and going, okay, I can figure out how they've done that instead of just going, I'm just going to point, you just perform, and I'll just film it and I'll just edit something
Yes.
together. It's more purposeful, if you like, seeing the reference shot of like
Definitely.
the shadow cast on the face that looks dramatic with the black background and going, that looks cool. How do I do it? And then kind of figuring out, going, oh, I know how to do that. And that intense interview in adolescence for the new video, that and going, right, I know how to do that. I know I need to shoot that way across the table for that one, that way across the table. I know I want to get kind of a wider shot of them talking to cut between the intense kind of tighter shot, which is close up. So looking at something and going, I know how to do that. So that's the progression of having an idea, but actually being able to do it instead of sing. I'll record it.
Yeah. Which is like anyone could do that, I suppose. Anyone
I
could do
mean,
that to a certain
and it's
extent.
fun. Like that's absolutely fine as well because that's what I was doing, and I enjoyed it. I wasn't filming it going, "I'm crap. I don't know what I'm doing." It was like I'm just making something. It's just fun.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, to wrap up this whole conversation and to give the listeners some advice, I want to know from you, what advice would you give to other friends that are looking to turn their creative bond, I guess, into something professional and long term?
Everything I've ever learned has just been by doing, and none of it. I've never done any education, as in uni or anything else, for cameras. I picked it up, and then everything I know from pointing a camera to lenses to technical bits and pieces to editing videos together and putting it all together has all been by just trying it and YouTube videos and doing all of that. Um, and when I first had a camera, it was I want to just film things as much as I can. So going to a band, playing in a pub around the corner from where I lived, and then filming, taking it back and going, oh my God, that looks crap. And then figuring out, oh, that setting, if you do that and this, and then going, ah, right. And then the next time I go out, film it again and going, ah, I can see what I did there. Okay, that worked. And just making mistakes of just stupid mistakes as well. Not that I was being paid any money to do it, but just spending hours and hours and hours making, and just making loads of mistakes. And then just even just having the memory card in, I put it in and thought, oh, it's a new card. It's fine. I remember filming for a bit. And then the card was full immediately. And I'm like, what? I've hardly filmed. And thinking, like, what have I done? What's going on? Took it home. I hadn't formatted it and wiped it. So it was three-quarters full when I started. And it's like, well, I'll never do that again. And that was right at the
Yes.
start, but just stupid mistakes of that. And then I think the best thing is just learning by just doing it and just, the more hours you do with anything, isn't it? Like you said, you watch back, you listen back to them first recordings you did, but how many hours of writing and rapping in more of a hip hop sense have you done since that album and the first stuff you did in like what, 2012? You know,
So many,
you've done,
so many.
and then I think back to like what you've done in like the last year and a half. You've recorded a ton of stuff, and then the last like year and a half, roughly, you've been performing. You'd never really performed the hip hop stuff until what, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, but
That's right. That's
properly,
right.
like you've done odd bits, and then the last year and a half, you've done loads. I mean, in the last like 3 weeks, you've done loads, and then just the confidence to just grab a mic and just introduce yourself of like, just knowing all those little bits what to do. The first time you probably got up and was like, okay, when does the music start? And now,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but now you know the etiquette of doing stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it's just putting the hours in and just doing it really.
Well, that brings us to the end of the conversation. I just want to say, Sean, thank you so, so much for playing such a vital role in making a vision turn into a reality. It was great to hang out with you, and it was great to have the finished project. So, guys, if you haven't checked it out already, The Enemy Within by Dribbz, which features Slimothy D and is produced by Pixel and directed by Sean O'Hanlon, is out now on YouTube. So if you haven't watched it yet, what are you waiting for? Go to the link, check it out, and I really, really hope that you enjoy watching it as much as we enjoyed creating it. Stay blessed and have a great day.